Welcome back to That's Life with John Carver. Today I want to share some thoughts with you on a subject that I have not mastered myself. And that is how to stop worrying. How to stop worrying. The thoughts that I want to share in today's show are not all mine. In fact, most of them will not be all mine. But they come from a book that was written, actually published back in the 1940s by Dale Carnegie, called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. I read it many, many years ago, and I skimmed through it from time to time. But the thoughts that I'm going to share in the show today, I hope at least some of them are going to enlighten you a little bit, share some ideas with you that if you're dealing with a consistent level of worry in your life, then maybe a sentence or a phrase or a story in the show today is going to help you in a big way. So I want to start by nine words that Dale Carnegie came up with, and so many other people have copied these words in a variety of forms. And the 9 words are: all you can do is all you can do. All you can do is all you can do. And that really sounds easy. That really sounds simplistic in life. But when you look at the scheme of life, all you can do truly is all you can do. Let me get into the book a bit here today in the show. He says, touch a button and hear at every level of your life the iron door shutting out the past of the yesterdays. Touch another and shut off with a metal curtain, he says, the future of unborn tomorrows. Then you are safe for today. Shut out the past. He says, shut out the yesterdays which have lighted fools the way to a dusty death. And the deep words, I know. The load of tomorrow added to that of yesterday, carried today, makes the strongest falter. Shut off the future as tightly as the past, he says, and the future is today. He says, there is no tomorrow. The day of man's salvation is now. Waste of energy and mental distress and all these things, he says, in a very easy example, he says that you need to live your life, we need to live our lives, in what he calls day-tight compartments. Day-tight compartments. Now, you've heard me talk about on the show multiple times that you have to have long-term goals, 1-year goals, 5-year goals, 10-year goals, in order to have, a game plan for your life. But he says in order to eliminate worry in your own life, that you have to live in what he calls day-tight compartments. There's an ancient text that he copies in this book that he says, have no anxiety for tomorrow. I'll say it multiple times in the show today, that I am no expert in how to overcome worry. I'm not. I'm just sharing ideas from Dale Carnegie, who was a very, very smart man, a millionaire back in the day. But he has some serious wisdom in this book that if maybe both of us, you and I, can model, then maybe we'll be able to get through life a lot easier with less worry in our own lives. Again, have no anxiety for tomorrow. He says, by all means, take the thought for tomorrow, yes, but be careful in planning and preparation, but have no anxiety about it. Having no anxiety about tomorrow is very difficult, especially when you're a planner like me, or when you have goals that are substantial, that you want to do great things in life. He says in the book, 1 grain of sand at a time, 1 task at a time. I'm sure you've dealt with situations in your own life when you look at the scheme of what you're trying to get accomplished, and it's so big that you can't imagine really doing it. And somebody said, I can't remember who said it, but they said, how do you eat an elephant? Well, 1 bite at a time. And for you and I to remember that consistently, it's going to be a situation whereby you and I we're going to be able to overtake things and overcome things and accomplish great things in life if we take it a bite at a time. He talks about a Greek philosopher who told his students, he says, everything changes except the law of change, he said. He said, you cannot step in the same river twice. The river changes every second, and so does the man who stepped in it. Life is a ceaseless change. The only certainty, he says in the book, is today. Why mar the beauty of living today by striving to solve the problems on a future that's shrouded in ceaseless change and uncertainty, a future that no one can possibly foretell? I think you and I borrow tomorrow's anxiety. We borrow tomorrow's trouble before we even know what tomorrow looks like. I've done it so many times. When I get worried about what might happen as far as a job opportunity or other potential opportunities, and I worry about the negative things that could happen instead of framing it in a way of what good things could happen. So my 90% of my life is worried about what might not even happen at all. He says in the book, the old folks, thousands of years, had a word for it. And he says that it's really about to enjoy your day, or one other person says it to seize the day, or to make the most of your day. John Ruskin had on his desk a simple piece of stone on which one carved word, just today, just one word, today. I think when you and I get so distracted about the people in our lives and the difficulties that may or may not happen, it literally stops us in our tracks. It stops us from progressing in ways that can not only change our lives, but the lives of people that we care about. He says, why not ask these questions and write down the answers? So let's go down these questions that Dale Carnegie offers to you and I. He says, do I tend to put off living in the present in order to worry about the future, or to yearn for some magical rose garden over the horizon? I know a lot of people who haven't chosen to live a magnificent life because they're stuck not only in the past, but they're stuck in a mindset that keeps them from taking little steps forward. He says in number 2, do I sometimes embitter the present by regretting things that happened in the past that are over and done with? Guilty as charged. Let me ask that question again. Do I sometimes embitter the present by regretting things that happened in the past that are over and done with? Number 3, do I get up in the morning determined to seize the day, to get the utmost out of these 24 hours? I would say most people don't. I would say most people just don't choose to seize the day. Number 4, can I get more out of life by living in day-tight compartments? Focus on today, in today, and not worry about the negative things that may or may not happen tomorrow. Number 5, he says, what shall I start to do today, this week, right now? You're more in charge of your life than I think you and or I really understand. I know people that are waiting for good things to happen to them in their lives. They're waiting for their ship to come in. Well, the majority of the people I know who've made it big time have never waited for their ship to come in. They swam out to the ship. They seized the opportunities that were given to them and or offered to them. He says in the book in chapter 2, he says, finally, common sense reminded me that worry wasn't getting me anywhere. He says, so I figured out a way to handle my problem without worrying. It works superbly. I have been using the same anti-worry technique for more than 30 years. It is simple. Anyone can use it. It consists of just 3 steps. And step number 1, listen to this. He says, I analyzed the situation fearlessly and honestly and figured out what was the worst that could possibly happen as a result of this failure. What's the worst thing that could possibly happen? We're talking about context. We're talking about framing things that may or may not happen in your own life. Step 2. After figuring out what was the worst that could possibly happen, I reconciled myself to accept it. He accepts the worst thing that could possibly happen in the situation that he's worrying about. Number 3. From that time on, what was the worst thing that could happen? It was number 2. Number 3, from that time on, I calmly devoted my time and energy to trying to improve upon the worst, which I had already accepted mentally. That he was going to diffuse potentially what's the worst thing that could happen, and then reframe his mind to accept the stuff that could or could not happen. So he says the same idea was taught by his teachers for thousands of years. Folks that had lived and were way smarter than Dale Carnegie, and certainly way smarter than me. So there was a Chinese philosopher that taught about having a true peace of mind. And I'm the worst guy to give an example of having true peace of mind, because I rarely have true peace of mind. But he says that it means having a release of energy. In fact, he goes into more detail about it. He says, number one, again, he's repeating what Dale Carnegie said, which he had it first, and Dale Carnegie copied him, right? He says, again, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? Number two, prepare to accept it if you have to. Number three, then calmly proceed to improve on the worst. Again, repeating what Dale Carnegie said. And I think you and I are often paralyzed by the fear of things that may happen that could potentially embarrass you, embarrass me, or it can literally freeze you in your tracks because you're afraid of failure. I think most of us struggle that we're afraid that we're going to fail, or we're going to look silly, or we're going to look foolish, or any number of reasons that you think you're the only one who has failed in whatever endeavor that you're trying to overcome. That's not the case at all. In fact, most people I read about and or know who've achieved any status of any kind have failed over and over and over and over and over again. But the difference between them and maybe you and I is they keep getting back up and tweaking their skill set so they don't make the same mistakes over and over again. He says in chapter 3, what worry may do to you. He says, the great teacher, Dr. Alex Carell, said, businessmen who do not know how to fight worry die young. And he says also do housewives and bricklayers. He says that fear causes worry. Think about that a second. Fear causes worry. So really at the core, based on this book, based on a lot of wisdom from a lot of different people, that the foundation of worry is being afraid of being fearful about stuff. So if you and I choose to squash fear, sometimes it takes squashing fear by the hour, because I don't think most people, I'd say more than half the people, can overcome fear once and for all. But for some of us, it's an hour-by-hour decision to squash fear. So when we squash fear, then worry has less of a hold on our lives and our minds. He says in the book, the famous Mayo brothers declared that more than half of our hospital beds are occupied by people with nervous troubles. Yet, when the nerves of these people are studied under a high-powered microscope in a post-mortem examination, their nerves in most cases are apparently as healthy as the nerves of Jack Dempsey, who I believe was a boxer back then. Their nervous troubles are caused not by a physical deterioration of the nerves, but by emotions of futility, of frustration, of worry, of fear, of despair, and defeat. Plato said that the greatest mistake doctors make is that they attempt to cure the body without attempting to cure the mind. Yet the mind and the body are one and should not be treated separately. Think about that in your own life. How many times haven't you decided to do something that you were afraid of doing, and once you decided to do it and you were willing to face the embarrassment of maybe not doing it perfectly, that you were able to get it done in really a shocking way, that you were pleased with the results because you decided to squash the fear, you decided to squash the worry, and then good things happen to you in a very, very substantial way. He goes on to say, worry can make even the most solid person ill. General Grant, back in the 1800s, Grant discovered that during the closing days of the war, the story goes like this. Grant had been besieging a certain city in Virginia for 9 months. General Lee's troops, ragged and hungry, were beaten. Entire regiments were deserting at a time. He says others were holding prayer meetings in their tents, shouting and weeping and seeing visions. The end was close. Lee's men set fire to the cotton and tobacco warehouses in Richmond, Virginia, burned the arsenal, and then fled from the city at night while towering flames roared up into the darkness. Grant was in hot pursuit, banging away at the Confederates from both sides, front and back, while Sheridan's cavalry was heading them from the front, tearing up railways. So it was a disaster. It was horrible. He goes on to say, Grant was half blind with a violent sick headache, fell behind his army and stopped at a farmhouse. I spent the night, he records. He says, in bathing my feet in hot water and mustard, and putting mustard plasters on my wrists and on the back part of my neck, hoping to be cured by morning. The next morning, he was cured. He was cured instantly, he says. And the tilling that was cured him was not a mustard plaster, but a horseman galloping down the road with a letter from Lee saying he wanted to surrender. When the officer bearing the message reached me, Grant said I was still suffering with a sick headache, but the instant I saw the content of the note, I was cured. Think about that a minute. He says, obviously, it was Grant's worries and tensions and emotions that made him ill. He was cured instantly the moment, he was cured instantly the moment his emotions took on the hue of confidence and achievement and victory. Let me share it again. He says he was cured instantly the moment his emotions took on the hue of confidence, achievement, and victory. Think about that a minute. So all the medical stuff that he was doing to himself to cure him wasn't doing the trick in this case. The good news that Lee was surrendering totally changed his whole attitude, which then started to help him feel a lot better. Dr. Alexis Carrel said, businessmen who do not know how to fight die young. I would suggest to you that most people, just my opinion, strictly my opinion, I have no facts to back it up, but I would say that most people live and die without really living. That is, they haven't achieved any sort of substantial goal in their life, primarily because of fear and worry. I struggle with it, and maybe you struggle with it too. Dale Carnegie goes on, he says, worry is like the constant drip, drip, drip of water. And the constant drip, drip, drip of worry often drives people to insanity and suicide. As Thoreau said in his immortal book, he says, I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life, by a conscious endeavor. If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. My paraphrase of that is that sometimes you and I have to fake it until we make it. Yeah, that may sound a little hypocritical, but sometimes you need to play mind games with your own noggin to get through the discouragement, to get through the anxiety, to get through the fear and the terror of doing things that you haven't done before. I would say that most people that have ever achieved anything great have chosen to do things that they've never done before. If not, they would not have achieved anything substantial. Dr. McCafferty says to face the facts, quit worrying, then do something about it. So if you were to summarize part one in Dale Carnegie's book, he says, if you want to avoid worry, live in day-tight compartments. Day-tight compartments. Don't stew about the future. Just live each day until bedtime. Again, that does not suggest that you're not supposed to have 1 year goals, 1 week goals, 1 month goals, 5 year, 10 year goals. I'm not suggesting that. But to worry about things that you are trying to overcome and or achieve and allow worry to be your motivator is literally going to stop you in your tracks from doing these great things. Again, part two, rule two. The next time that you deal or are tempted to deal with worry and or struggle with worry, he says that ask yourself again, I'm summarizing, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen if I can't solve my problem? That's been a total mind shift in my life. Because I have to always remind myself, what if I mess up? What if I fail? What if I flub up? What if things don't go exactly according to plan regarding work or doing shows like this or doing the other things that I do? What if I mess up? I have to play mind games with me. So what? Because you know what? Everybody that has ever attempted to do something great has messed up more than a few times. So if you and I are going to try to achieve certain things that are better and or more than the public or the rest or the majority, then you have to understand, I have to understand that we're going to mess up multiple times in that process. He says, again, summarizing, prepare yourself mentally to accept the worst or the worst if possibility. then calmly try to improve upon the worst case and understand and agree that, you know what, if this happens, okay. If I mess up, if I fall on my face, if plan A doesn't go right, we still have plan B, C, D, and E, and F and G and H and so on, right? And then rule number 3, he says to remind yourself of that huge price you can pay for worry in terms of your health. That is, if you and I consistently worry over and over again, then it's going to impact our health in a substantial way. So he moves on now in the summary of the book to chapter 4. He says that how to analyze and worry problems, how to deal with worry and how to overcome worry, because there's several steps to do that. He says first you have to get the facts, because you and I, without the facts, that monster of worry grows in a substantial way, because you and I sometimes tend to focus on what could happen, what negative things could happen instead of what positive things can happen. He says then once you have the facts, then you have to analyze the facts and then arrive at a decision and then act on that decision. For me, I have to write stuff down. I have to say, by this time, by this date, by this hour, I'm going to have this done. If not, my tendency to put it off because I'm afraid to do certain things or to embrace certain things or to take on certain challenges are going to stop me considerably. He goes on to say, half the worry in the world is caused by people trying to make decisions before they have sufficient knowledge on which to base a decision. Let me say it again. Half the worry in the world is caused by people trying to make decisions before they have sufficient knowledge on which to base a decision. For me, this is just my life. Once I develop the facts, and the facts are the facts, not opinions or not maybe-sos, but the facts, then it's a lot easier to take the steps that I need to take or you need to take when you have the facts. So invest the time, according to the book, and some very smart people, some other very smart people, to get the facts first. Then when you get the facts first, then it's a whole lot easier to stand on facts. Listen. It's a whole lot easier to stand on facts than it is to stand on feelings. Say it again. It's a whole lot easier to stand on facts than it is to stand on feelings. He says in the book, I think I can honestly say that my life is now almost totally devoid of worry. I have found, he went on, that if a man will devote his time to securing facts in an impartial, objective way, his worries usually evaporate in the light of knowledge. Think about that. So he says, so I banish 90% of my worries by taking these 4 steps. He makes it very simple, 4 steps. Writing down precisely what I'm worrying about. The act of literally taking a pen or a pencil in your hand and writing down stuff is hugely powerful. Number 2, write down what I can do about it. Again, number 1, write down precisely what I'm worrying about. Number 2, write down what I can do about it. Number 3, deciding what to do about it. And number 4, start immediately by carrying out that decision. But it all starts with writing it down, like I've shared on the shows multiple times, writing down your goals and put a deadline on it, because a goal without a deadline is just a dream. You have to put a deadline to it. Put it on paper, not on your phone, not on your computer, but on paper. William James said this, once a decision is reached, an execution in the order of the day, again, William James, dismiss absolutely all responsibility and care about the outcome. In this case, he undoubtedly used the word care, which is the same word really as anxiety. He meant once you have made a careful decision based on facts, go into action. And don't stop to reconsider. Don't begin to hesitate or worry or retrace your steps. Don't lose yourself in self-doubting, which begets other doubts. Don't keep looking back over your shoulder. He says, I once asked Wade Phillips, one of Oklahoma's most prominent oilmen, how he carried out decisions. He replied this way, I find that to keep thinking about our problems beyond a certain point, listen, let me repeat this. I find that to keep thinking about our problems beyond a certain point is bound to create confusion and worry. There comes a time when any more investigation and thinking are harmful. There comes a time when we must decide and act and never look back. So he shares even more. There's so many examples in this book. You gotta get the book by Dale Carnegie. He shares some more examples by a guy named Galen Litchfield. And he talks about how this guy overcomes worry. He says, question number one, what am I worried about? What can I do about it? What am I going to do about it? And when am I going to start doing about it? When are you going to take the steps to start fighting worry in your life? And I would say to you, at least based on my observation and my own life, that worry doesn't go away so easily for some of us, you and I. Because we tend to think, some of us here watching, tend to think that the glass is half empty most days. So you have to play mind games with yourself to maybe most days think that the glass is half full. So literally overcoming worry is a daily struggle. And this is just a piece. I'm going to call this part one of Dale Carnegie's book, How to Stop Worrying. My name's John Carver, and I thank you for watching That's Life with John Carver. We'll be back soon.